open. Hey guys, Dr. Drunk aka here with a game for you, World of Warships. This time we're playing Tier 8, divvied up with Miss Patriot and Puddin597. We're top tier, it's a double sub game, but surprisingly there's no CV, so God bless matchmaking. Now, we are in the premium Tier 8 cruiser, the USS San Diego. What do we need to know about the USS San Diego? Well, she's a Tier 8 cruiser. She's armed with a lot of 127mm destroyer caliber guns. These are very similar to the guns you would find on most high-tier American destroyers. So what's different about her compared to most Tier 8 cruisers? Well, if you're looking at the main cruiser line, the Cleveland at Tier 8 has 155mm guns. It has a lot of them. The Baltimore at Tier 8, in the other end of the split, has 203mm guns, and it has not quite as many of them. But you'll also notice something that this cruiser does not have, that all of its Tier 8 tech tree counterparts do, and that would be radar. Oddly enough, this cruiser, similar to her sister down at Tier 7, which is another Atlanta-type or Oakland subclass cruiser, this is the only one of the bunch that does not have radar. It does, however, trade a radar for a heal. It also trades HE shells, which the Atlanta at a tier below it has, for spicy AP or sap shells, and a reload booster for those sap shells. Now, it's not unlimited like the Austin would be at Tier 10, but it's still pretty effective overall. Without the ability to start fires, your damage potential for the San Diego relies a whole lot more on doing raw damage. So this ship will play a little bit differently than your typical Atlanta-type cruiser or even your typical American light cruiser. However, you will see how effective these sap shells are, and you see a DD, you shoot the DD. With a reload booster, you can do pretty good damage. We're doing 2k a salvo on a bow-in destroyer. Of course, we have to aim better. That would definitely help. Now, the one thing you're going to see here, the reload on the San Diego without, by the way, if you go broadside to a sap shooting cruiser, just may as well just bend over, put your head between your legs, kiss your ass goodbye, as we just bitch slap the Lo Yang into next Tuesday for our first blood award. The thing to remember, I lost my train of thought with what I was about to say. The thing to remember with this Tier 8 cruiser is the reload on these 127s is not terribly good. Sure, you have a lot of them, but you're looking at about a 5.3-ish second reload without the reload booster. And you see that reload booster has quite a long cooldown. The reload booster has like a 2-minute and 45-second cooldown. That's a long time to wait for that burst damage. And you have to be very, very efficient and very thought-provoking in the use of that reload booster because you only get 3 of them. Now we're taking Superintendent, as evidenced by the 4 heals. Oh, by the way, it's a Tier 8 cruiser that gets a bunch of heals, so lulls for the poor Tier 6s, which have to deal with it. Being 127 American guns, these are really floaty, so we're absolutely brain damaged and unable to hit a Hatsuharu at 12k. That's 100% on me for not playing this ship quite frequently enough. But nonetheless, we get a few shells in there. We do some decent damage to the Hatsu, which should allow our Kunaberti to finish that job. Well, between the Kunaberti and the Akazuki, they should be able to finish that. Now, at this point, I'm screaming, be careful. There's a Helena right there. He has 4-kilometer Hydro. We get the kill on the Hatsu and the Cachalot, so Miss Patriot gets herself a nice, tasty double strike. She's going to pay for this pretty hard, though. However, we also get to make the Helena pay for it as well. If you see the damage we're able to do to anything broadside using sap shells, you're going to see, yeah, this is pretty effective. I mean, this guy is now running for his life. Remember, Helena, I am a tier higher than you. You may have HE, but I have the power of the spicy AP, and you can't handle spicy AP, sir. Away with you. Leave my destroyer alone. And when, oh shit, that's a Kansas. That's a Kansas that's not looking at me, and that's okay. What can we do here? Well, Kansas overmatches us everywhere. Remember, you're looking at basically Atlanta. It has no armor. You just have to wiggle your ass and pray when something bigger than a pea shooter decides it wants to focus on you. So we're going to duck into cover behind the island, and we're going to hope that the Kansas has very few brain cells to rub together, which, in reality, the Kansas has very few brain cells to rub together, so somehow we managed to get away with that. Conaberti torpedoes are out. The Helena is running away from a submarine because, oh joy, submarines are perhaps the most fun gameplay that you can have. Now, I'm getting greedy for this. I'm going to be really honest. This is a Kansas. This Kansas neglected to shoot at me broadside when I was out in the open, and I'm going to assume that this Kansas continues to have some modicum of brain cell infection and can't manage to figure out where he's supposed to aim. Light cruiser, 6 kilometers away. He shoots AP at, I think, the Prince Heinrich. That's, what, 10k from him? Maybe 7 or 8k? I'm not even sure. I don't understand what this man's thought process is. This guy is about as close to a paid actor as possibly can be. But we will take it. Let's see if we can use LOL torps. Oh, now the Kansas looks at us because the Prince Heinrich is behind the island, as our team is just basically attempting to throw themselves into a meat grinder as much as humanly possible. Let's see if we can use LOL torps. Yes, the San Diego, like the Atlantic, gets 4.5 kilometer torpedoes just for the memes. This man is going to be dumb enough to actually start taking torpedoes from a San Diego. And just for even more lols, which I didn't even realize this the first time I watched this or when I played it, we get a torpedo hit, which detonates a Kansas. That's right, folks. A Tier 8 San Diego took nothing but secondary damage from a Kansas and detonated him with a torpedo. Only in World of Warships can we see people with this much intelligence functioning on such a high level. Now, we did lose our home cap. Lost our home cap. We have a mid-tier and a low-tier cruiser that are basically pushing into the enemy home cap. We still have a submarine alive. Miss Patriot is clinging to life with 24 more hit points than she probably really needs. And at this point, we're discussing what our best course of action is. Puddin's going to stay in the cap. He's going to collect decap. That should keep us even on points, even though they've started to close down that gap. But Prince Heinrich, I'm not quite sure how he spots the Yukikaze. I guess the Yukikaze is shooting at him. I'm not entirely sure here. But one can assume that we know what the Prince Heinrich is going to do. The Prince Heinrich is going to say, hey guys, I have Hydro, right? I can push straight into this. This should go exceedingly well. This always goes exceedingly well. German battleship players, exceedingly brilliant when they choose to push into things. Oh, look, wait, I forgot. The Heinrich has torpedoes, and what do we have to try and do? We have to try and torpedo a destroyer that is probably close enough for me to Hydro Rush. What happens in return can only be described as a very typical World of Warships moment, excuse me. The AL Yukikaze weaves out torpedoes, actually guns down our Prince Heinrich. I'm presuming he took a torp first. That's the only excusable reasoning that I have, and the only thing that I'm going to consider at this point, because anything less would just be crushing to my morale. Of course, Yukikaze torp's coming. There's a Perth in the cap. Puddin had to smoke to stay dark. This Patriot is going to very intelligently decide, you know what, I don't feel like taking an engagement unless I can smoke up and farm from a distance, because one lol stray shell basically ends her game. Oh look, there's a Perth. Oh look, we're about to see the uselessness of American 127mm AP on a broadside target. We use our last reload booster because he's broadside. The man finds out that there is something called a brain, and he tries to angle a little bit. We just start chunking him for 4 and 5k salvos because SAP is amazing. Using the last of the reload booster, we're going to switch to AP. We're going to switch to AP against a broadside light cruiser, and it's going to do precisely nothing. Folks, this is why SAP is the superior ammo type in every single circumstance. No reason to be said anything else. SAP is the superior ammo type. Our Galissoniere gets torpedoed by a Hipper because, of course, he does. What else would happen? World of Warships, and suddenly we're down by one ship. And guess what? Can anybody predict what's about to happen next? Can anybody predict what might happen next? How am I still alive, he asked. That's a good question. I would like to know the same. We switch back to spicy AP because, once again, SAP is the perfect choice. And Puddin decides he wants to make the game interesting by eating a Perth torpedo. Don't disagree with him. Now, pop Hydro here. Why am I popping Hydro here? Well, because we have no idea where that Yukikaze is. This Patriot somehow gets the torpedo kill on the Perth Hydro cruiser, by the way. We have no idea where the Yukikaze is. He should feasibly be spotted. Oh, what did I ask before? What's going to happen up north? Oh, my Hoka's going to die. Surprising. The AL Yukikaze obviously went up the channel. We popped Hydro because we don't know where the destroyer is. He hasn't been seen since he sunk our Prince Heinrich. And yeah, okay, we haven't seen torpedoes either, but we don't want to take that chance. Puddin decides now would be a good time to go Cap C. So he shuffles his way into Charlie. Now, we have a minor problem. There is a light cruiser, which is made out of basically spit, tissue paper, duct tape, and prayers, up against an 8-inch gunned heavy cruiser and a Strasbourg, which is like, what, 330 millimeter guns, something like that. AKA, it can just punch through all of my armor and ruin my day. Remember what I said about the Kansas? You just have to wiggle your ass and pray that somebody doesn't decide to punch in your asshole. Well, we're about to go have some asshole punching. Figuratively speaking, of course, because here comes the Hipper. Now, I do have 2 DDs. We have a significant torpedo threat, however, they have a good hydro counter in the Hipper. One of our DDs, remember, is very low health, so that farming capability will be significantly reduced unless they can sit in smoke. Hipper goes broadside. We turn away to minimize the profile that he has to shoot at. Just look at the damage that SAP does. Hello? SAP is just a gross ammo type. The Gokase somehow gets spotted. I don't know how he got spotted, but he decides to shoot instead of turning away. Mistakes were made, sir. You cannot stand up to the power of California. Be gone with you. That's our 3rd kill. The Hipper is turned away, and because the Hipper is angled, SAP is going to be significantly less effective here. So, at some point, we have to think about how do we really save our destroyers in this case. We don't have any HE capacity. The Akazuki's already set 2 fires, which the Strasbourg has damconned. We don't have the ability to set fires, folks. Remember that. We have to rely on our raw damage. We also have to rely on the Strasbourg being terrible, and he's admittedly not terrible because that relatively hurt. We burn heal, we turn away, we're going to try and put the island between ourselves and the Strasbourg, and we're going to attempt to go dark at this point and reposition. We lost spotting on the Strasbourg because, and of course he gets a lucky fire on 1 shell, we lost spotting on the Strasbourg because Puddin ran behind the smokescreen. Puddin sees the Yukikaze and decides, well, it's time to put this guy to bed. Akazuki can open up from smoke. and the Yukikaze will die. This puts us up on points. Our salmon rightly goes and collects the B cap to guarantee that we're up on points. Guarantee that the points tick remains the same. That's a very good play from a sub player, I have to say. As much as I hate complimenting a submarine player, I have to do it. And the Hipper has no choice at this point. With a quick turnaround, suddenly we're able to basically put this game to bed. Now, the Hipper has to come in. He's going to enter our detect. We want our first salvo to be on our terms. We want to be able to turn away. The Hipper decides, fuck it, let's go for it. And he just sails straight into us. The submarine decides he wants to make things interesting. Somehow manages to get a ping on our Akazuki and torpedoes our Akazuki. Submarine interaction is just so much fun, isn't it? Of course, their sub decides he wants the cap. He decides that, well, you know, I can sit in this cap. Then I'm going to dive and ping. Okay, great. Good for you, sir. Good for you, sir, but I have the amazing skill known as a brain. My brain is not as smooth as a bowling ball, and to dodge subtorps, even if they are pinged on you, you just slow and turn in as they approach, and they do miss. Well, subplay is relatively brain dead, and you just have to have a brain cell more than they have in order to win. Now, we're going to have something incredibly fun here. Sub is surfacing, Kraken is on the table, but Puddin decides, you know what? There's no better time to T-pose on somebody. Oh, by the way, Sap hurts subs. And no better way than to torpedo a submarine. Incredible savings. Let's go to the post-game. We have 696,000 credits for 151,000 damage. A whole slew of rewards. Holy shit, I can't even tell you so many of those. We get a TNG trifecta. Well, sort of TNG trifecta, but the three of us on the top of the team with a big old chunk of base XP at 2707. 56,000 damage to a Kansas. Really? In open water? A whole lot of credits, a whole lot of base XP. Guys, thank you for watching. We play most of these games live on the Twitch channel at twitch.tv/DrDrunkAKA. And don't forget to hit up the Discord. Don't forget to drop a like and a follow on Twitch and on YouTube. It helps us out a lot. Have a good one, guys. The bar is closing. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.